Hi guys, this is Mrs. Rooker, and today we are doing modeling with equations and inequalities. So that basically means that we're doing word problems. We are taking real life situations and we are turning them into our own equations and inequalities, and that helps us to solve for missing values. So it's really important today that you kind of practice some of these things on your own, because I know this can be tricky for some people. So what I would like you to do is pause the video at the beginning of each problem and really read through the problem on your own and think about how you would set up your equation, because you learn a lot better doing it that way than just listening to me do it all and having me tell you how the equation should be. So everyone read through number one on your own and think about how you would write an equation that represents this. So do that now, and pause the video if you need to. All right, Gary plans to mow lawns to make some money to buy a new car. He charges $25 per lawn, and M represents the number of lawns that he mows. Write and solve an equation that represents how many lawns he would need to mow in order to buy a car that costs $5,500. All right. I personally, this is just my personal preference, like to start a lot of times with the total. So I know that the total that he needs is $5,500. That to me is kind of an easy place to start. Then the only other information that we have is that he charges $25 per lawn. Per, we probably talked about this in the video, the day 9 video, or maybe day 8. Per usually means multiplication. So we're doing $25 times the amount of lawns he knows. So 25 times the amount of lawns, but we don't know how many lawns, so we call that M. It's going to be 25. Oops. And that's all the information we have. So that's my entire equation. 25M, $25, times the amount of lawns he mows should equal $5,500. And now we're going to solve this equation. To solve, we need to get M by itself. We need to get rid of the 25. The opposite of multiplying by 25 is to divide by 25. M equals 220, which means he would need to mow 220 lawns. It's good to kind of understand the context of what's going on here. So 220 lawns. All right, let's move on to the second problem. Go ahead and pause and read through this and think about what you would need to include in your equation based on this new information. All right, the equation above does not take into account the expenses that Gary would have to run his lawn mowing business, such as fuel and maintenance. Assume, on average, that the fuel and maintenance cost for Gary's business is $3 per lawn. There's that per word again, per lawn. Right? And solve a new equation that reflects this cost. So the other things are still in play, the $25 per lawn and the $5,500 total that he wants. So we're still going to have that, 25M, and then we're still going to have $5,500 total. But we also need to include his extra fees. So since those are included in addition to as I got ahead of myself. Those are not, the $3 is not more money that he's making. It's actually money that he's having to spend. So that's not going to be added to the money he's making. It's coming away from the money he's making. So he's now actually losing or having to spend an extra $3 per lawn. So the operation that I'm going to use here is subtraction, because he's losing $3 per lawn. Per means times And so we're multiplying that times the amount of lawns he mows. Sorry, I was kind of distracted ahead of myself there. All right, so this is the new equation, which we can simplify. We can combine like terms. Since these both have m's, they're like terms. 25 minus 3 is 22m equals 5,500, which means he's not really making $25 per lawn anymore. He's charging $25 per lawn, but he's only really making $22 per lawn because it costs some money for him to pay for the fuel and the maintenance. And then to finish solving this, we need to divide both sides by 22. $5,500 divided by 22 is 250, which stood for the amount of lawns he'd have to mow, which hopefully makes sense that he's now going to have to actually mow some more lawns than he originally thought. He originally thought he'd only have to mow 220 lawns, but now he has to pay for fuel and maintenance, so it's going to take more lawns for him to make the amount of money that he wants. All right, so again, pause the video if you want to read question number 3. Think about what else you're going to have to include in your equation. Unfortunately for Gary, his father's old lawn mower won't start and he needs to buy a new one. The model he chooses costs $220. Write and solve an equation that represents the amount he'll need to make. He'll make per lawn, the cost of fuel and maintenance, and the purchase of the new lawnmower. So basically, we're going to take the equation we had, which was 25m minus 3m equals 5,500. We also need to include that he has to pay for a new lawnmower. The new lawnmower is going to cost $220, so we need to take that away from his profit. So he's now having to spend another $220. I'm not going to do 220m because 220m would mean that he's having to pay it every time he mows a lawn, which isn't true. He's only paying that one time, so there's no m on it. All right, now solve this equation. You're going to simplify first by combining like terms. These two combine to give us 22m. Then I need to move things away from the m. I need to move the 22. I also need to move the 220. I'm going to add 220 to both sides first. I end up getting 22m equals 5,720. And then to get rid of the 22, since this is 22 times m, I have to divide by 22. So 260 lawns. Which again, hopefully makes sense that this is even larger than before because now he has more expenses he has to worry about. All right, so moving on to number 4. Take a second, read number 4, and think about how you would set up that equation. Mackenzie is collecting cans for the canned food drive at her school, and she has a goal of at least, the key word there, at least 1,000 cans by the end of the food drive. If there are, sorry, there was an announcement, so I had to pause the video. If there are 8 days remaining in the food drive, write and solve an inequality that represents how many cans she must collect per day in order to exceed her goal. All right, inequality was underlined, and the reason we're using an inequality is because it said at least 1,000. It doesn't say she wants to collect exactly 1,000, it's 1,000 or more. So there are 8 days remaining in the drive, and we're assuming that she hasn't collected any yet. So she's going to collect 8 days worth, and we're trying to figure out how many she must collect per day. So 8 days, we need to see how many she must collect per day. Sorry, and all right, so 8 days. We don't know how many she's collecting per day, so I'm going to call that X, because it doesn't tell me which variable we need to use. You can use whatever letter you want to represent that, but I don't know how many she's collecting per day, so I'm just going to call it X. But we do know that we want it to be at least 1,000. So 1,000, and then we need to put a symbol here. It's not going to be an equal sign. It's going to be a greater than or equal to, because at least means it can be more, but it cannot be less than 1,000. All right, and then to solve this, we just divide both sides by 8. So X must be greater than or equal to 1,000 divided by 8, which is 125 cans per day. So on average, she must collect 125 cans per day. If she doesn't collect 125 cans one day, she must collect more than that, on some of the other days. Brandon and his 3 friends went out to dinner with $50 to spend. Write and solve an inequality that represents the amount of money each person is able to spend on their meal. And this is, again, on average. Some might spend more, but some might spend less. If we're making it totally fair, then maybe they should all spend the same amount. I don't know. All right, so take a second, think about this one on your own. All right, so key word here is that it's Brandon and his 3 friends. Think about how many people that is. Brandon and 3 friends. That's not 3 people, that's 4 people. 4 people went to dinner. We don't know how much each person spent, so we're going to call that X. $4 times X amount of money. We don't know how much. But we do know that they only have $50 to spend. They cannot spend more than that, which means they can spend less, but they cannot spend more. So that's going to be less than or equal to. Because they could spend 50, they could spend 40, but they can't spend more than 50. To solve this, I'm going to divide both sides by 4. X is going to be less than or equal to 50 divided by 4, 12.5, which means $12.50 is how much each person's meal can be on average. Of course, hopefully they know that has to include tip and tax and all that stuff. All right, last problem. Again, take a second, read this to yourself, and then we'll come back and do it together. All right, Skylar is filling her pool for the season. In 10 minutes, she has put 200 gallons of water in the pool. If the pool is 10,000 gallons, write and solve an equation to find how much longer it'll take until the pool is filled. So there's a lot of kind of interesting information in here. The first thing is that in 10 minutes, she has put 200 gallons of water in. The pool is 10,000 gallons, and then we need to write an equation for how much longer it will take to be filled. The first thing, and I think this is the trickiest thing that we need to make sure we know how to do, that's different from previous problems, is we don't know, based on this information, how many gallons per minute are being filled, but they do give us that it's 200 gallons in 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually simplify this, and that'll give me how many gallons are in 1 minute. So how many gallons per minute, which is what we really want. if I simplify this, I can divide 200 divided by 10, and I end up getting 20 gallons per minute, which is going to be 20 m, which is what we want for our equation. So I know that she can fill up 20 gallons per minute, plus I know she has already put how many gallons in there? 200 gallons in there. And I know that I need that to equal how many total gallons for the pool? 10,000. So 20 gallons per minute plus the 200 gallons that are already in the pool needs to equal a total of 10,000 gallons. And that's pretty much all the information we have. That's all we need. So now we just need to solve for M, which stands for the amount of minutes that we have remaining. So to solve this, I put a line down the middle. I need to get rid of the 20 and the 200. I subtract the 200 first. I'm left with 20m equals 9,800. And then I divide both sides by 20. M equals 490, which means 490 minutes until that pool is filled. And it just says to find out how much longer. It doesn't say if we want it to be in minutes or hours or whatever. You could convert that to hours by dividing by 60, since there are 60 minutes in an hour. But we'll just leave it in minutes since it didn't say what units we needed to use. All right, so that video was actually a little bit short, which is nice for you guys. So I'm gonna kind of, here I'll zoom out so you can hopefully see all of the equations. Might be hard to fit them all. So yeah, go ahead and screenshot this, write down all the notes, and we'll see you in class. All right, thanks guys.